just 4 attendees. All right, we have just 4 attendees in our class at this point. So let's wait for a few minutes and then we will start our discussion. Okay. At this point in our class, but anyways, let's start our discussion. Let me share my PowerPoint with you guys. Okay, just give me a moment. Can you guys see the presentation now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, give me a minute. Has Dr. Kazi joined the meeting? Is there any conflict of this class with any other class?
Yes, sir. At this time, there we have 2 lectures, but last 3 weeks, their lecture was not conducted.
Oh, really? Sir Kazi, are you in this meeting? I just saw a notification that Dr. Asadullah Kazi joined the meeting. I just want to make sure that there is no conflict or.
Sir, he is not in this team. और वैसे भी आज
Yeah.
उनका लेक्चर नहीं है, आज डॉक्टर रिजवान का था.
All right. Okay, that's
HD.
fine. All right, that's fine. It's okay. Okay, so you guys can see the presentation. All right, anybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in our today's meeting, our agenda is to discuss about engineering ethics, and we will see some of the moral issues that arise in engineering practice and the skills that we need for moral reasoning and the steps or the points that we need to keep in our mind while addressing any moral issue. Okay, so this word engineering ethic, it's a combination of two words, engineering and ethics. Okay, so how would you guys define engineering and define ethics separately? Okay, so any one of you, like you guys are in sixth semester of civil engineering, you have studied a lot of subjects about engineering. So what is your idea about engineering? That how can be engineer? How engineering can be defined? Like in your own words. Anybody? I hope, I expect that you guys definitely have some idea about engineering till this point. You are in your sixth semester, your third year. You have studied so many subjects, taken so many courses, exams. So what do you think? What is basically engineering? Okay, Danish Aslam. Danish, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ji Danish, so what is your idea about engineering?
Sir, in my opinion, does have to bring the work in economical way. किसी भी चीज को सर इकोनॉमिक एक बजट की लिमिट में ले आना और बेस्ट वे से उसको परफॉर्म करना है इंजीनियरिंग के लिए.
Okay, बजट की लिमिट में ले आना और उसको बेस्ट वे से परफॉर्म करना. Okay, by the way, as an engineer, what are our three top priorities? 1, 2, 3. Can anybody tell me? Like, what are our priorities as an engineer?
किसी भी सर टाइम within budget, within scope.
Time within
किसी भी
budget.
प्रोजेक्ट को कंप्लीट करना.
Okay, okay. Any other idea? Like these things are important. But what is our topmost priority as an engineer? If let's say you are designing a building or a bridge, so what will be your topmost priority? Sorry?
Stability.
Stability or safety, right? So it's stability or safety. We say safety is our first priority. As an engineer, we never want to design a structure that's unsafe. So as engineer, this is our topmost priority to design safe structures. What is our second priority?
Sir, within budget.
Within budget means economy. We want to design economical structures. That is our second priority, because we can design like maybe it's minority structures. Like if you put in so much material and so much reinforcement, although like the excessive use of, let's say, steel in construction is also dangerous. But as a layman, as long as we don't have any critical condition, we might think that putting too much steel and large depth section would be safer, right? So as an area, our first priority is safety. Second priority is economy. We want to make our safe structures economic. Behaviors are there in engineering, those are termed as engineering ethics. And these ethics are not just related to the practicing engineers, rather these are also related with the research. You might have heard this term of academic integrity or academic research integrity. So professional ethics or engineering ethics define that integrity. We'll talk about that later in our semester. This is a great combination if you have the technical knowledge, the problems, and plus you have the ethics. You know the behavior, the standard behavior, the do's and actual member of the society. All right. Seeing this, the difference between ethics and okay, if you guys don't have any idea about this, then let me share my idea. Basically, morals are the ones that we define for ourselves. Like all of us have certain education, certain experience, certain exposure, and depending upon that, we analyze the things and we filter that information or every action into good or bad. And then, depending upon all this knowledge, we define a set of behavior for ourselves. And those set of behaviors are termed as moral values. Okay, so these moral values are defined by one for oneself, and these are not defined by any external agent like society or a group or a profession or an organization. No, these are individual for oneself. In contrary to this, standards which are defined by external agents like society or your community or any organization or any profession. For example, in civil engineering, we say that professional ethics are defined by, let's say, American Society of Civil Engineers or Pakistani Engineering Council. Pakistan Engineering Council. So these are external agents who are defining these standard behaviors. So such standard behaviors which are defined by external agents are known as ethics. Whereas the values which we define for ourselves, these values are termed as morals. So let's see this difference. So the word morality originates from a Latin word mos, meaning custom. Morals are the principles or habits with respect to right or wrong of one's own conduct. So these are not defined by anybody else. It's one's own conduct. And they are not imposed by anyone. And depending upon a few factors, our mind filters things as good or bad, and these are the ideas that help frame our personality so that we can distinguish between what is right and wrong. So these moral values basically frame our personality. Like if you think certain thing is correct, you keep on doing that. And if your understanding of any other thing is that that thing is wrong and you avoid that thing, then you don't do that. So these do's and don'ts, when you do them on a consistent basis, they define your personality or shape your personality. And several examples of the moral values, the common moral values which people define for themselves are being good to everyone, or speaking the truth, or going against what is wrong, avoiding cheating, or being a nice human being. So these are just a few examples of moral values that we define for ourselves. And there can be several other moral values. And at times, our own moral values might have clashed with the ethical values of any society. We'll talk about that. We'll see that in a short while. And these moral values, these values keep on changing as we grow. Let's say you are living in a certain culture or in a certain community, and after some time you move to another society. Let's say you were earlier living in a remote area of Pakistan, supposedly, and then you move to a big city like Lahore or Karachi, And a later stage of your life, let's say you go abroad, you go to Europe or Africa or America or Australia, and you see an entirely different culture. So depending upon this, your own moral values also change. They are defined by yourself, and you can keep on changing them. As you grow, most of these values overlap each other, or like for example, uh, we like most likely we'll define our moral value as that we should speak the truth, and similarly, this is common in every society. Like every society want its members to speak the truth. So this is common between moral values and ethical values. But sometimes these moral values and ethical values, these values are do not match with each other or do not coincide with each other. And plus, these ethical values are different from culture to culture. There are several things which may be assumed as ethical in our society, but may not be assumed as ethical in some other societies. And vice versa is also true. For example, uh, can can any one of you give us an example of a value or an activity that is assumed to be ethical in some foreign culture, but not in our own culture? Is there, by the way, is there any foreigner in our class? Any foreigner here?
Yes, sir. Foreigners are there.
Oh, foreigner. Where are you from?
I'm from Sri Lanka.
You're from Sri Lanka. What's your name?
Nushan Nafis.
Nushan Nafis. Okay, Nushan. So you have this exposure of at least two different countries. You have been in Sri Lanka and now you are in Pakistan. Um, when you came here, you definitely would have observed some cultural changes or cultural differences. Like before I go to Nusan, one thing that comes into my mind, like when I went to United States and we were having our orientation, so they told us about a term which was new for me at that time. They call it cultural shock. There's a term it's known as cultural shock. And cultural shock is basically the cultural changes that we observe when we move from one place to another place, like in a very short interval of time. Like, let's say I'm here today and I take a flight tomorrow and maybe day after tomorrow or another day in 2 or 3 days if I'm in the United States. Now, in a very short period of time, I am in a place that has totally a different culture. So I will get a cultural shock. And then they explain that so they explain their culture and they help the foreigners to absorb that cultural shock. Okay, so now coming back to Nusan. Nusan, did you observe or did you experience this kind of cultural shock when you came to Pakistan, or were there any things which were like totally new for you and you thought those were totally acceptable in your society but unacceptable here? Like any examples?
At the beginnings, that means our Muslim community is a little bit familiar with respect to this culture. But as we have came here, I can hardly remember that there was a cultural event, and there was the main events has been took place, and it was a little bit different rather than in Sri Lanka. And if I talk about the moral values, that means in sites and each and everything that has a major difference in Sri Lanka and here in Sri Lanka, almost the financial sector will be completely goes with the interest and other field activities, but I have seen here it was too much less.
Oh, you're okay. You're saying that in finance.
Because the majority of them are Muslim community there, and they completely based on the interest rates and each and everything, and they almost it's just simple for them.
Right. It's not an issue for them. It's very like acceptable. Although even in Pakistan, our financial system is based on interest, but still in individual capacity, there are a lot of people, like a vast majority of people who are not in favor of this, who say that this is not incorrect. Okay, that's true.
And
all right. Okay. Now I can also give you a few examples of these ethical differences. For example, drinking alcohol, that is considered totally ethical as long as you are within certain, you are following the law. So drinking alcohol is fine in let's say the Western culture. You can consume alcohol, okay? Whereas in our culture, in Pakistani culture, drinking alcohol, although there are people who do that, but that is considered as unethical. So you see, the same action, but one society is open to that, but the other society thinks that that is immoral. And similarly, there are several other things like the way we dress up. Certain dressing codes might be acceptable in other countries, but they are not acceptable here in Pakistan. And similarly, there are things regarding our eating habits. Let's say if you are in a culture that is vegan or vegetarian, so in that culture, if you eat meat, that will be considered as unethical or wrong. Whereas in Pakistan, we eat meat all the time, and it's totally fine. So activity is ethical in one society, but it's unethical in the other society. And let's say if you want to see the comparison between ethics and morals, now a Muslim who is actually a practicing Muslim, and he says that drinking alcohol is it's immoral and unethical. Okay, so when he is in Pakistan, it's immoral and it's unethical. But if the same person goes abroad, let's say to the United States, now he says that it is still immoral, but as far as the ethics are concerned, the ethics which are defined by the society, so drinking alcohol is ethical. So now the moral values and ethical values are contrasting each other. So these ethical values vary from culture to culture, country to country, whereas the moral values are defined by the individual, and unless an individual changes those values for himself, those values remain the same. And I was talking to, we were having the same discussion with another class. So one of the students shared that in their country, they say salam when they go anywhere and meet anybody. They don't say assalamu alaikum. So he said that when he came to Pakistan, he realized that this thing is not considered as ethical. If you just say salam, people don't like that. They mind this. So saying assalamu alaikum, the entire word is the way we do it. Okay. So these ethical values and these ethical values, they vary from society to society and culture to culture. All right. Does anybody want to say anything about this? Any comments or any questions? Okay. No questions. Okay, then let's move on. Moral issues. What do we mean by moral issues? Now, in engineering, some of the issues are purely technical issues, and some of the issues are moral issues. Now, what are purely technical issues if we talk about in terms of civil engineering perspective? For example, if you are designing a building, how much should be the depth of any particular beam, or how much reinforcement should be provided in the slab? How much should be the depth of the footing? How much should be the thickness of any particular wall? Now, all these issues are purely technical issues. They do not have anything related to the morality. So such issues are termed as technical issues. Whereas in our practical life, we face some issues which have moral aspects to them as well. So such issues are termed as are moral. Such issues are termed as moral issues. So Let's see how we can define moral issues. A moral issue can be understood as an issue to be resolved not only by considering the technical stuff, but also keeping moral values in mind. So, can any one of you give me an example of a moral issue that a civil engineer might encounter in his professional life? Now we know what a moral issue is. So, can we think of any examples of moral issues that civil engineers might encounter in their professional lives? Anybody? Okay, Hassan Subhan, are you there? Hassan, are you there? Seems like Hassan is not there. Okay, Kamil.
Yes, sir.
Ji Kamil. So,
Sir, the most obvious motivation in my mind is like कि हम हमारे जब बिल्डिंग में काम कर रहे हैं वहाँ पे रोज कितनी लेबर आती है सर गिविंग देम वेजेस ऑन टाइमली बेसिस टाइम पे अगर दे दिया तो दैट इज वन सॉर्ट ऑफ मॉरल इशू मतलब अगर बहुत सिंपल सी कॉमन एग्जांपल अगर हम कंसीडर कर लें
sorry, दोबारा बताइएगा. I couldn't hear you properly.
सर जो सेइंग कि हम एक बिल्डिंग बनाते हैं तो वहाँ पे जाए बात हमारे पास लेबर होती है काफी ज्यादा तो अगर उनको
ठीक है.
टाइम पे बेसिस ना दें तो दैट विल बी कंसीडर्ड एज अ मॉरल इशू तो एम आई राइट और रॉन्ग
हाँ, अगर हम उनको टाइम पे वेजेस नहीं दे रहे हैं, so that's immoral. Basically, moral issue is a problem. Now, this activity of not paying wages to your subordinates, that's an immoral thing to do. Issue is a problem. Khadija. Khadija, are you there? Okay, seems like Khadija is not there. Maqsood.
Yes, sir.
Ji Maqsood. So any example of moral issue, in your opinion, like your idea?
So, like designing a boundary wall, some people consider it immoral to have a short boundary wall.
Short boundary wall. Okay, that may be like in terms of the privacy, maybe, right? Is that what you want to say?
So, some people also construct short boundary walls.
Short boundary walls, but how is it a moral issue?
Some people don't like it, they consider it immoral for themselves.
For themselves. Okay, maybe you are saying in sense of the privacy of a household. But anyways, okay. Let me give you guys a couple of examples of moral issues. Let's say you are an engineer and you come to know about a recent collapse. There is a recent collapse in your community, collapse of a bridge. Okay, and you also come to know about a structure that is also unsafe, a bridge which is marginally safe, and you inform your supervisor, but your supervisor asks you to remain calm about that because you do not have any financial resources available. So he asks you to remain quiet about that situation and wait till the next year when you get the financial resources to fix that bridge. Now, this is a moral issue because now you are aware of a structure, or you are aware of a situation which can be hazardous for public, but you but because of the financial constraints, your supervisors are not allowing you to raise that issue. So now, what should you do? Should you raise that issue or avoid? So this kind of issue, which does not only have which does not have only technical side, but has moral side as well. This kind of issue is termed as a moral issue. Another example is, what should an engineer who observes his colleague copying confidential information unauthorized do immediately? If he chooses to stop his friend, what if this gets repeated without his notice? If he chooses to report the management, what if his friend loses the job, which is morally correct? So now you are in a situation that your friend is copying some information that he is not authorized to copy. Every organization has certain confidential information which they don't want to leak, and they don't want their employees to copy that information. So if you see one of your friend is doing that, now as a member of that organization, it is your moral or ethical duty to work for the benefit of that organization and report any misconduct. Now, your close friend is involved in that. Let's say you opt to just stop him and counsel him. What if he repeats that thing and you don't notice that? That will be again harmful for the organization. The second alternative, the second option is that you report that misconduct to the organization. In that case, your friend might lose his job, or some strict action might be taken against your friend. So in this situation, what should you do? Uh, should you report or should you not report? So this is a moral issue. Now you have a conflict. You don't want to harm your friend, but at the same time, you don't want to harm the organization that you are working for, because that's your ethical duty. So such issues which have moral aspects to them are termed as moral issues. Okay. Then some steps to deal with the moral issues. There are several steps that can be, or there are several things that we need to keep in our mind while dealing with the moral issues. For example, one of the first thing is moral awareness. Moral awareness means recognizing the problems. You should have that ability, or you should have the willingness to recognize the moral aspects of the problems. Some of the people, they don't consider the moral aspect at all. They are just interested in making money or getting their own benefits. So we'll say that those people do not have moral awareness. So we need to, whenever we come across any problem, we should have that ability to identify that moral problem, and we need to see that whether it should be dealt with ethics or it's a legal problem and should be dealt according to the rules and regulations. That is termed as moral awareness. Next is cogent moral reasoning. Now, in order to conclude any issue, if more than one party, let's say 2 or 3 different parties are involved in a moral issue, so one important thing is to listen to all the parties. You listen the point of view of all the parties that are involved, and then you enlist all the arguments in a logical and in a moral way. That is termed as cogent moral reasoning. And moral coherence is, once you have all the facts with you logically arranged, then you should have a consistent and comprehensive viewpoint that you should adopt in order to resolve that moral issue. So you should be consistent in your policy, and you should be comprehensive. By comprehensive, we mean that you should consider all the information or all the facts and all the arguments while reaching the conclusion. And then moral imagination. Moral imagination means you need to use your creativity, and you need to think of alternate solutions that might exist for a moral problem. Like, for example, if we look at one of the moral issues that might be considered as a moral issue for civil engineers that we face in our practical life, and if you see its solutions that different people adopt. So one example, let me come to my teams. Have you ever heard about the commission that people, especially in the public sector, I'm talking about the public sector, the commission that they charge on different public sector projects, like in different public sector organizations, like in CNW or WAPDA or WASA or NDA. I hope some of you would have surely heard about that there is certain percentage that people, the government officials, they charge, like SDOs or XCNs or chief engineers, they charge that certain percentage of public sector projects. So have you guys heard of that? Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So who said this? Yes.
You said Irtaza.
Irtaza. Okay. I don't. Oh, Irtaza. Okay, Irtaza. So where did you hear about this? Irtaza, अपना माइक म्यूट कर लें, तो अपना स्पीकर जो है वो या तो हैंड फ्री लगा लें, मुझे अपनी आवाज आ रही है दोबारा. Okay, so Irtaza, where did you hear about this?
सर अब आ रही है
जी, आप बताएं इर्तिजा, आपने कहाँ सुना इस कमीशन के बारे में?
सर ये कॉमन यूज टर्मिनोलॉजी यूज होती है हर जगह कमीशन की, जब भी आप बात करते हैं प्रोजेक्ट की या कॉन्ट्रैक्टर की बात करते हैं. हाँ सर.
So I'm talking particularly about the commission that the government officers charge in the big government organizations. Let's say there is a building project or a road project or a bridge project, then different officers, they charge certain percentage of that. For example, SDO probably 2%, something like that, and some other people, some other higher ups, they have their different percentages. So you have heard about this. What is your opinion about that?
सर अगर तो गवर्नमेंट अलाउ करे तो अच्छा हो जाएगा, लेकिन the government policy के they are not allowed for
Acha, what happens is in these projects, like the people who are working in those organizations, majority of the people think that this kind of commission is fine, it's legitimate. And there are a lot of people, most of the people who are outside of these organizations, they think that this commission is not ethical. Why the people who are outside of these organizations think that this is unethical? Because this commission is something which is beyond or above their salary. Okay, and this commission is not transferred through although like it is, like everybody knows that this commission is being charged by the officers, but this commission is not transferred to them through any bank transactions, or this is not a declared money, or they do not pay tax on that. That is why other people think that this commission is unethical. Whereas the people working in those organizations think that, oh, they are working really, salaries are not good enough, and they say that, oh, this is properly documented, and they show you registers in their offices that you see here, we are keeping track of it, so it's not unregistered or unaccounted for. There is a proper proper log available of this commission. So this kind of argument the people working in those organizations give in order to prove that this is ethical. But the people who are not working in these organizations, they have their own arguments. So this is one example of an ethical issue which civil engineers face in especially in public sector organizations. Now, what are the solutions which the people who do not think that this is ethical? What are different solutions they adopt? Now, some of the people, what they do, they say that, okay, Everybody is taking this, but I will not take there's different ethnicities or different races and people with different religious beliefs, people with different financial backgrounds or educational backgrounds. So diversity is a must, and unless we are tolerant to diversity and we have a broader perspective, we will not be able to formulate a society which has harmony in it. So tolerance to diversity is important. Next is moral hope. Moral hope means better if we use good communication and healthy discussion and having a rational dialogue, we will be able to resolve most of the moral issues. So this assumption or this hope is termed as moral hope. And last thing is integrity. We should have moral integrity. We should have strong moral principles of honesty and truthfulness. And if we have that strong moral integrity, then it's very likely that we will be able to resolve our moral issues in an efficient manner. So having honesty, truthfulness, and other strong moral principles, personal conviction, that will help us in solving our moral issues. So these were different things that I wanted to bring to discussion in today's class. Anybody having any question about this or any comments or anything? Any questions or anything you disagree with?
Sir?
Ji.
Sir, the minorities should follow their own ethics or they should try to follow the ethical values of the country they are living in?
Actually, we have to have certain balance. Like every country, they have defined certain guidelines for the minorities, and in all the civilized societies, the minorities are allowed to practice their own beliefs, but there might be certain restrictions that they can follow, or they can, let's say, celebrate their events within their communities, or they may fulfill their rituals within again within their communities or within certain parameters. So with certain guidelines, the minorities are allowed and minorities should be allowed to practice their beliefs. But again, if their beliefs conflict with the beliefs of the majority of that society, then they need to follow certain guidelines. As I said that like within their communities or like indoor activities might be done. So those kind of precautions have to be taken in order to avoid the conflict. So responsibility lies on both the sides, on the majority side as well as on the minority side. Both the parties have to be respectful to each other. Only then they can survive or the community can grow. Otherwise, there will be conflict or confrontation, and that's not desirable for any society. Okay.
Okay, sir. And sir, is it ethical for the Muslim professionals to work with non-Muslim organizations, specifically on the projects like construction of a temple or church, etc.?
Now, again, there is a difference of opinion about this. I cannot give a religious verdict, but some people think that, oh, I'm an engineer, my job is to construct the things, and I do not care what type of project is being constructed because this is my livelihood. On the other hand, who people have relatively strong religious beliefs, they consider these things, that if, let's say, if it's a place of worship or any other religion, So some person who has kind of strict belief might think that he or she should not be involved in that. Now again, it comes to personal beliefs that what you believe in. Some people are tolerant to that, some people are not tolerant to that. And I think it's up to an individual. Okay.
Yes, sir, there can be morally difference, but I just want to ask that does our society allows that?
I think there is no uh, like currently maybe 2 or 3 decades ago our society was more conservative, but if you look at our current society, it has become liberal in several different ways, and even you can see people with different religions celebrating each other's religious events. Like you can see these things all over the social media, uh, and I think in the current time, if anybody opts to do that, uh, I think he or she would be able to do that. He or she might face some criticism, but I think if he or she is really into it and really wants to do that, then can do that. That's just my idea or my perspective. Okay.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you.
All right, guys. So I have the next class is in 5 minutes. So I think I'll just conclude our discussion here. Let me mark your attendance. All right, so I mark your attendance. Okay, guys. So see you guys in next class, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.